Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at something a little different.
Okay.
We're diving into a podcast called English Dose.
Oh, cool.
And this is a podcast that's all about helping people learn English grammar. And I think we both have a lot of thoughts on that topic.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talk about it all the time.
Yeah, we do.
Especially for people who are trying to learn English as a second language.
Right.
It can be one of the trickiest things to learn.
Absolutely. And you know what I thought was really interesting about this podcast is right away they say, ditch the rote memorization.
Oh, yeah.
Like, stop trying to just memorize all the rules.
Yeah, just like memorizing a bunch of verb conjugations and all the different tenses. I mean,
Yeah.
I can see why they would say that.
Right. And so I'm curious, like, how do they suggest that people actually learn grammar then?
Well, they really emphasize the importance of context.
Okay.
So instead of just memorizing rules, they say you should try to learn grammar by seeing it in action. So like reading a story and noticing how the past tense verbs are used naturally.
That makes sense.
You
Yeah.
kind of absorb it without even realizing it.
That's kind of how I learned, I think, when I was a kid. Like, I just read tons and tons of books and
Right.
never really thought about the grammar rules. I was just enjoying the stories.
Exactly. And it turns out that's actually a really effective way to learn. The podcast actually mentions a study that found that
Wow.
learning grammar in context is much better for long-term retention.
Interesting.
It's kind of like the difference between memorizing a list of ingredients versus actually tasting a delicious meal.
Oh, I like that.
One is just information, but the other one creates like a lasting impression.
Yeah, that's a great analogy, I think. So, okay, we've ditched the rote memorization. We're embracing context. But, I mean, obviously, we can't just read. We have to actually use the language, too, right?
Exactly. That's their second big point.
Okay.
Active practice.
Oh, yeah.
They really encourage people to put those grammar rules to work in real life situations.
So, like, what kind of things are they talking about?
Well, it could be anything from journaling to writing social media posts.
Okay.
Even just sending text messages.
Oh, interesting.
The idea is that the more you use the language, the better you'll get at it.
I mean, it's kind of like anything else, right? Like, if you want to learn to play an instrument, you can't just read about it. You have to actually practice.
Exactly. You have to make music.
Yeah, and I remember when I first started writing in English, my sentences were so clunky and awkward, but the more I wrote, the smoother it became.
And that's the whole point. The more you use grammar, even in simple ways, the more natural it will start to feel.
So we've ditched the memorization, we're embracing context, we're actively using the language. Is there anything else we can do to make this process even better?
Well, actually, they have one more tip, and it's my favorite.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Make it fun.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, they emphasize that learning grammar doesn't have to be a chore. It can actually be enjoyable.
Okay,
Well, they suggest using things like interactive apps and movies and even AI-powered grammar tools, anything that can make the process more engaging.
I actually do something kind of similar when I watch movies sometimes.
Oh,
I'll
yeah.
pause a scene and try to break down the grammar.
That's awesome.
It's like a little game for me,
I love that.
but it helps me see the grammar in a new way.
Exactly. It's all about finding what works for you
Yeah.
and making the learning process enjoyable.
So there you have it, 3 key takeaways from the English Dose podcast. Ditch the rote memorization, embrace context, and most importantly, make it fun.
And this leads to a really interesting question for our listeners. If you could design the ultimate grammar learning game, what would it look like?
That's something to think about. We'd love to hear your ideas in the comments.
Until next time,
Happy grammar adventure.
happy grammar adventures.